through the millage. I think the next thing that would be profitable for us to do as a commission would be to talk about anything you see missing from the budget from your perspective that perhaps should have been included or needs to be considered to be included, and opt for any of those conversations. So this is potpourri with intent, of course, and should have been something we probably discussed at our strategic planning earlier. Any comments from anyone who would like to begin? Commissioner Reed, I see it on your face.
The only thing I would consider.
Get that microphone pulled down.
The only thing that I would consider is something for the roundabout for the airport.
Okay, and does that need to be in this fiscal year, or you're thinking as a set aside for some funds? Or could that all be in next fiscal
Well,
year?
it's not going to be completed this year anyway.
Right.
And Chris told me they were successful, I think. Did you have some success today on the?
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to have conduit there already. We got that taken care of today.
Great.
So we'll get it just in the near future,
Okay.
maybe next year.
Okay. So it could be a fiscal year 24. All right. Any other suggestions? Commissioner McLeod.
Thank you, Mayor. For me, that's a little hard at this point because we don't have a list. I know in years past, we've had a list of some of the items, more discretionary.
Yes.
And so not having that, it's hard to know what is part of this fiscal year's budget. So I'd hate to just start, for me, suggesting things that may be included or asking things to be taken out that maybe aren't in there, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, and we don't have that list here. I think probably because there was a little preoccupation with public safety in terms of the expense. Yeah. Commissioner Walker.
I'm not, excuse me, and please forgive me for just getting back in my seat. So I did not hear your comments, so. Well,
Anything that for the budget consideration from from the commission standpoint that's not included that you'd like to have discussed?
yes, and thank you for asking that question. And if the fellow colleagues don't have an appetite for it, I don't have to have a discussion. But I was going to ask and want to bring up to you all, do you want to have an appetite for discussing the Chamber's BBIC situation with the no, we did all the cutting, we cut everything out and left it, in discretionary kind of a situation. But if there's no appetite for it, I'm the only one.
The BBIC?
Yes.
Right.
If
No,
I'm
I'd
the
have an
only one that-
appetite for that discussion, personally.
And I don't know if anyone else mentioned the other things. Because I'm hearing it.
No, so far, we've talked about just the roundabout, and that could be in fiscal year 24, the one at the airport that Commissioner Reed brought up.
Okay. That's the only thing so far? Okay. Yeah.
We're early in this discussion.
Okay, I just
so-
want to make sure.
So the BBIC represents the Black Incubator segment that was requested by the Chamber.
By the Chamber.
And by the way, that particular initiative, I probably got a little confused on in terms of that if we didn't have the works as a facility to be able to do it, maybe we could do it in the well, but the well really didn't have a facility to do that as we chase through this.
Right.
Well, long story made short, it's an office that gets occupied a couple days a week, 2 or 3 days a week scheduled, and the chamber can do it out of their existing chamber building. So they can office it, and the Tampa group can be here to represent it, and
Sure, and
then it
be able
could
to
become-
support
Right.
what we know what's been requested, I think we need to see happening for our community as a whole. Are we still, I can go down my list? Then I thought about also, and I just want to make sure conversation is being had, because I have not been part of the conversation. So with me not being part of the conversation, I want to make sure if you all have had the conversation, let me hear it. Has there been anything, appetite or anything discussed about Polk Museums of the art requests or conversations? Because I've heard from outside sources that there have been some conversation among my colleagues, but of course, I'm here.
Can give you an update on that.
Okay.
So Polk Museum of Art, which is going to be doing their $8 to $10 million expansion with respect to that facility, we're out raising money and requested from the city $500,000
Yes.
that we can talk about phasing in over time. And because this is a public safety budget that's emphasized, my question to Dr. Kerr at Florida Southern College was, is this something the city could defer considering until following fiscal year? And she said, absolutely. So it could be spread over as many as 5 years, and our consideration of it could be in fiscal year '24, or we might want to do, so if we decided to do it, we could do $100,000 a year, which would be certainly a strong uptick to the art community in terms of what we're representing, because it's a facility that houses it, it gives more exhibit opportunities and some more storage locations. And we've talked about how do we increment art over time. Well, that would be a way we could add an increment in over a 5-year period, or if we wanted to do it shorter than that, a 4-year period at 125, obviously, a year. But that is not something we need to consider now, and it is something we could have them make a presentation for in the next fiscal year, sometime from October or thereafter, to talk about it. And the phasing of those dollars is fine with them if the city were to do it at that rate, if we decided to do it, because it allows them to do the last things they're doing in the project anyway. So on a timing basis, really, the pledge is more important than anything, and then how we spread it, we could decide to do later.
If I hear you correctly, Mr. Mayor, and having the conversation that you've had, that we have not, is the appetite is pretty much for making sure there was a pledged amount in some respect that make it be phased over a number of years in fiscal years to come.
Correct.
If I hear you correct.
That's correct.
Okay.
And it's not something that we have to decide now for this fiscal, another, something we could really take a look at. When do we start? And if we started it in fiscal year '24 and made a decision to support it, that would be adequate timing for them.
Certainly, I was going to make sure that both of those particular items was something that I wanted to make sure there was appetite for, along with my colleagues, as we have the discussion, as we are now, and whatever dollar amount that we would land on, certainly for either one of them would be something I feel can be, staggered over a couple of fiscal years. For either one of those, certainly we do that. So I want to make sure there was some more conversation besides myself.
Great.
In discussing. Y'all got me?
Any questions on that one at all? Commissioner Mann?
Sure, and just so for clarification, are we going to each kind of go, or are we going to talk about each one as they're presented?
Let's make a list and then come back. How's
Yeah.
that? Okay. What else? Anything else? Mike, what 6 projects do you have?
None.
Yeah. And we love the reliability. That's good. Commissioner McCarley.
I'm interested in discussing, but I have an appetite to talk both of the things already mentioned,
Yes.
especially that long-term plan for the museum. But I would not want to see that in exchange for further arts monies that go to the Mayor's Arts Council. I want to protect the Mayor's Arts Council, but also I know we had that discussion, I don't remember what month now, maybe February, about the ARPA funds for those arts organizations that still have the ripple effect of COVID. Even though COVID seems to be somewhat over, there are groups that are still struggling with covering their costs, and ARPA was designed, in essence for that, in response to that. So that's something that I'm always interested in. I don't know, I think after our last meeting, the rest of the commission may not have the appetite for that, but I would still always welcome a discussion revolving around how to help those smaller agencies. Whether, and if we could do it through the Mayor's Arts Council, that'd be great.
Commissioner Madden.
So could we have Mr. Brossart clarify the total ARPA amount that's going this year? You said there's 2.9 million left, but what is the dollar amount that is incorporated for the fire truck, 13 police vehicles, and body cam equipment?
Hey, Andrew, could you switch it over for? Thank you. Okay, let me blow this up a little bit for you.
Please, please.
It's not just you, Commissioner
No,
Walker.
Okay, so this is where we stand after our last
ARPA discussion. 17.8 for the wastewater project. We've already spent the money for the WebEOC software, $4 million for affordable housing. We've set aside $100,000 to pay the first phase of KPMG. We've got $75,000 for the second phase, and most of that is associated with interaction we're having with KPMG with the wastewater project, okay? If in fact we need to use, say you decide you're not going to leave these $2.9 million undesignated and you were to move them back up here, then we would just get estimates and adjust the KPMG for phase two. That's easy. But so in essence, the only other project that's out there is the connectivity analysis and some minor construction with some intersections in and around Bonnet Springs for the 640. I think that just gets it started. So to answer your question, ultimately 2.95 is what is sitting there, ma'am, as undesignated.
That 640 for the connectivity includes design alone only?
I think it was designed, Brian's probably going to need to help me with that. I think Chuck was the one that provided the 640. But I thought it was design and some construction, but not a great deal of construction at all. Maybe you can help. I don't.
Brian's going to come up, but it is, I think, a combination of the study, design, and a little construction, but Brian can add some detail.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Based on the discussions we've had with Bonnet Springs Park, of course, Chuck, as sort of the expert on this in concert with Public Works, there won't be any construction dollars likely in the 640, and even if there were, that would probably only be able to correct a very small portion of the city's match in trying to bring additional federal dollars to connectivity projects to Bonnet Springs Park. We are scheduled next week to meet with the Regional Planning Council to assist us in applying for a grant from the feds. I just pulled the email up. Of course, it's got lots of acronyms in it. It's a regional discretionary grant program to bring some planning dollars and eventually construction dollars to connecting the park to the Florida Tile site, to Lake Beulah around the RP Funding Center, the spots we've been talking about continually, but they will cost in the likely millions, if not tens of millions.
Okay. Commissioner McLeod.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions on that. 640,000 seems like a lot, and I think, Sean, you and I talked about this for the connectivity analysis, and so I was curious as well. What does that include? It's a large line item. And have we not already done some connectivity analysis in the areas you're talking about, Brian?
We have, and we are continuing to with our consultant that's working on the Downtown West Master Plan. That's GAI. And so that work is ongoing. Expect by the end of the year to really have a much better handle on the findings of their project. The stakeholder meetings are scheduled in August at Coleman Bush with a number of sort of stakeholders from the neighborhoods and from the park interest and from RP Funding Center. The staff is setting those up now. That 640, it really includes design dollars. It's not so much on the planning side as it is on actual design.
And is the thought that's probably under the bridge, this connection?
In both cases, yes. And that speaks to just the unimaginable cost at going under the CSX rail line, under the George Jenkins Bridge. You know, it's just very, very expensive.
Elon Musk, boring technology.
That is from our high skills, high wage expert on the commission.
Of course.
Other cities in Florida are actually having them come into Florida to do some analysis, so it's not completely alien idea. Okay, but so Mr. Brossart, I didn't hear I know the 2.9, but out of that, we're already taking for the fire truck and the 13 police vehicles and body cams. So you said this year would be this amount, then there was left That's what I really want a clarification on.
How much is left after the 13
Yes.
vehicles?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay, I'm
The
sorry.
fire truck.
Yeah,
Yes.
the fire truck is, I don't know if you can see this down here.
Behind the podium.
Where is it? I don't see it anymore.
Very bottom,
Oh, okay.
right, there's $2 million worth of police cars for 30 sworn folks.
Yes,
And then there's $900,000 for a fire truck.
I see that.
The 2929.
But we're saying 13, so, because, I mean, there's no use even talking about if we have money for the BBIC or the other things. You had said that of the 2.9 million, this year, we're contemplating in the budget with the millage rate that we've been discussing, 900,000 for a fire truck, and then only the 13 police with vehicles for this year.
For this year.
So what
If in
is that
fact,
amount?
if in fact you decide that you're going to fund the other police officers through 2026, it will use up all the rest of that $2 million.
Right.
Right.
But we might not. So that's why we're having discussions on these other items that were on the strategic planning for ARPA funds. So, otherwise, why would we even discuss the BBIC or the other things from ARPA funds if we, for sure, were deciding that was what we were doing for the next 4 years?
Because you'd want to be adding them to the budget in another way beyond ARPA.
And but that's what we're discussing.
right.
Like, this is our dynamic discussion right now, right?
So you're going to spend $867,000, round numbers today, $867,000 on 13 vehicles, and $900,000 on the fire truck.
So about
That
1.8
leaves-
out of the 2.9.
Yeah, 1.8. 8,614.
Well, that's all, I just want clarification, because I'm not adding projects, we don't have money, but
Don't.
I support both the museum contribution, and I would be open to discuss the BBIC and the arts funding as well, if we wanted to take from the projected cost of the police that those ARPA funds went for over the next few years, but,
Well, the good news is, on the art museum, we don't have to do it this fiscal year. So if we're going to defer one, that would be a good one to defer because the timing is acceptable with them. And really let them make a presentation, to the commission and talk about that in full so that we can look at scope and take a look at that. Yes, Commissioner Walker.
I'm thinking about, the number of years here, sitting here, and this, of course, been my last budget hearing, kind of a take. But anytime, we dealt with public safety, which is the number one, thing for all of us, we knew it takes dollars to take care of public safety. And, it may take care of doing what needs to be done. I know, and I can appreciate why staff have suggested what they're doing to support using the ARPA dollars that we do have, and thank you again for doing that, to support or lessen what kind of a, ad valorem kind of a increase of, we may need to take for public safety, but if it needs to be done, you gotta do it. If you gotta have police, you gotta have fire, citizens are gonna be on our behinds if we're not doing what needs to be done to protect them. So I know we had those kind of discussions over the years, I have, and we've done that. We made sure that we had to do what needed to be done to take care, making sure our citizens are protected properly. I'm saying all that to say, if we have dollars, as we are through ARPA, to support something, I don't have no problem with doing that. But if we need to make that, have that increase in some respect to support it, I'm for that, because I want to make sure public safety has been taken care of for all of our citizens. That's my spiel.
I want to remind us, too, we can adjust the days a little bit in the
That's-
budget.
thank you,
So
because that's
if we
what we
think
can do
about
too as
something we
well.
want to get in here, that just ARPA is certainly the best source because it's not taxpayer funding. But if it's beyond that, we can talk about
And
that.
you can adjust the days on hand, cash on hand.
Sure, it's taxpayers' original funding, yes. ARPA's funded by taxpayers, that is correct. Good, excellent point. Commissioner McCarley scolded me, and she was appropriately.
But it's true.
Yes, that's right. Commissioner McCarley.
Well, just thinking about what Commissioner Walker just said, the public safety needs were going to come about whether we had the ARPA funds or not.
That's right.
So for me, looking at this overall budget, we should be planning accordingly regardless of the federal dollars that come into play.
Exactly.
To take care of our public safety first and foremost. So that's the only, ARPA to me, when we discuss the things that are on the list right here, our general fund should be able to cover the public safety aspect as much as humanly possible. So that's just where I vacillate, where I felt like ARPA was presented in the beginning stages as, you know, help for the community and paying for like the wastewater project. I'm completely on board with. That's an infrastructure issue. It's something that absolutely needs to be done, and I think that is a good use of funds. But then this becomes very nebulous, and I would think we would have needed those police officers and the extra fire station regardless of whether COVID hit us or not. So that's just sort of my rub, is feeling like where you apply ARPA versus where you apply general fund, and if we didn't have this amount of federal tax dollars coming in, we'd still need to be finding money to cover our public safety. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around all of that.
So if you think
at
about it though
once.
as a whole, if the more we can do through the city in ARPA on its projects, the simpler and lower the cost loss to KPMG is because of the audit capability in the way that we work. So the only thing you're protecting probably is the margin of some of those dollars in allocation. So if we were allocating the majority of that to the simple side, and then what else you felt was needed on the round outside, you know, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of another. And so it's really allocating it so that for the purpose of auditing primarily, or as at least a consideration. Okay, any other funding additions you'd like to add before we go back and discuss then specifics? Is there anything in your mind, Commissioner McLeod?
There's a lot in my mind, but I won't just spill it all out right now, so.
Okay. Anything in terms of additions you were thinking about?
No, I was thinking about the art museum request, and I don't know if we need to make any decisions on that today. I like the idea of having a presentation, and I haven't had a chance to meet with them yet, so if we can hold that one, that would be my
They're very willing.
preference.
They're
Yeah,
totally willing
I'm
to
open,
hold.
I need to connect with them and hear more.
And I would agree in regards to that in some respect, because even with what the mayor just shared with us today, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You know, and of course, we wouldn't have known it because he and I can't talk about it because something is going to be coming for us for a vote. So I got that.
And in fairness to them, this is a new initiative by definition, and because there's not an urgency, they just were asking, should we talk about it for this? And because we were public safety focused, my recommendation was, no, let's talk about it for fiscal year '24.
But I am willing to have further discussion on how can we incorporate the additional dollars for the other projects outside of the one that we, I guess, we put on hold. And if we need to make sure we look at days cash on hand to help support that, I'm willing to have that discussion now.
Commissioner Madden.
Just so for clarification too, since we just create our own agenda here when it's our turn, and just hand it over, and we don't know what to do. So, you know, I had kind of reserved mine, you know, for public safety. And so mine were really more with regard to that additional SRO to fill in for when someone's sick or has to leave the scene, to have that covered and not take away from traffic. And then also the PAL program.
I thought that was very interesting that the chief talked about on PAL, the availability of using the Lakeland Square Mall for a portion of some of that, because that's a great partnership with
Love
those
that.
owners and
Very
available
creative
space.
ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Commissioner Madden, what was your comment about the SRO? I'm sorry.
So it sounded like the chief said that we have the right number of SROs for each middle school and high school in Lakeland. But if they take time off, or if they're sick, call in sick, then we have to take someone from traffic, you know, from another part of the organization to fill that spot. Because with the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas ruling, they used to be able to rove in and out a little bit, or take a lunch, or take a break, run an errand. And with this new ruling, they can never leave the premise without that coverage. And so it does require it's a strain on the rest of the organization to fill in those gaps when we do have SROs out. So he had mentioned if there's an extra SRO that's kind of fills in for that, instead of, using other officers.
I may ask Chief for some clarification. We did talk on the break, and so I'm a little unclear. In the 13 that we've worked on recommending, there is an SRO included in that. But now
Okay.
I don't know if that would handle the coverage that you're talking about. And so Chief maybe can add some comments to that.
If Chief's going to come up, this is our chance to kind of advocate on behalf of, I know the PAL's been through the reorganization and they're doing great, then they had COVID, so it might not even be anything that Chiefs, can present today as what the PAL League would need. I'm just going to always be, their biggest fan and advocating, for that program. So, if he wants to speak to that or if that would be for next year, but I just always want to make sure that that's front and center.
Thank you. Chief, just to be clear, I'm not sure in what we worked on and the SRO included, if it would provide this kind of coverage or if you had that programmed in out of school somewhere. So you might can help us with that.
Oh, excuse me, one of those 13 would allow for one more SRO that would help rove the elementary schools and add for a backup to the high schools and the middle schools.
Great.
So it would help start to relieve some of that. So we'll hope only one of them gets sick a day.
So we do not need to write that down as a 14th person.
No, sir, I believe we can cover that as is.
Is there anything that you could think of we could write down that would augment what we're doing in the PAL program that would be necessary, or would that be something you'd need to have time to think about?
We would certainly need to study it a little bit more, and there's several different ways we could approach that to enhance what they're already doing. But that program seems to grow. Every time we add something, it grows a little more. So I think it'll continue to grow as long as we continue to support it. So.
Because I know that even they were thinking about the different sports, kind of it was fledgling a little bit through COVID, of course, makes sense. But just kind of thinking about what the community needs are, and specifically, there's not really an organized youth lacrosse league throughout the city. And so that was a very small league, but just to get FHSA approved lacrosse at the high school level, that took all the coaches, and so that's been a need in the community at large. And so something that I know I've spoken to the PAL leadership about, would that be something that we can incorporate, help get sticks and helmets in the hands of kids that would help the whole community, but also certainly then, maybe get some philanthropic dollars to help get the sticks and helmets in the hands of the at-risk kids. So it's just things like that, being able to expand those programs, but it comes down to you really want, because it's PAL, Police Athletic League, you want to make sure the whole goal of that's like the NLOs. You want to create those relationships with the kids, with the police officers, because we believe in Lakeland, Florida, that when we had the BLM movement, we had relatively, peaceful demonstration. We didn't have some of the things that we saw in other communities because of our gang task force, NLO, SROs, PAL League efforts in the community. So to me, it's a real preemptive work. And so I don't know if it's always front of mind for folks. And that's why I feel like it needs a little extra advocacy. And so I try to put it forward because I feel like it's maybe not seen by everyone, but building those community relationships and impressing upon children, that good relationship with police officers from a young age, and to be able to get them into sports and off the streets. To me, I can't think of many other things that contribute to overall safety and security in your community than what that PAL League does. So if there's anything that I know, for a while I was hoping that the Fire Station 3 could potentially move and build 8, and then that 3 location, because it's so close to Simpson Park, it's where they've practiced. I know that thankfully from Bob Donahay's work and with Cook Park, we were able to get a facility where they can play their football games. Of course, they do need transportation to get over there. It's a little further stretch, and so that Station 3 is just kind of right there in the neighborhood, right where they meet for practice. So I know also like computer labs at a time, they, it's very minimal even the minimal computer lab that we have at Simpson Park for after-school efforts. So just anything that, I always want to hear about that. If there's something that we're missing or something that you said that there's always more funding that we could use. Coming out of COVID, now that we're getting reorganized and back on track with the kids, I'd love to hear if there's something that we, should be thinking about.
Absolutely. We'll get back with some opportunities that we could move forward further than what they're doing now. But I will tell you, most of the coordinators are taxed out where they're at right now with the different programs. So that would most likely include personnel if we tried to expand some of the programs they're doing. So
Nothing you feel like you need in this budget year at all for that?
no, sir. At first blush, I think we're serving quite a bit of kids out there now. There's always more we can do, but it would take more than what we have to do more, I believe.
Commissioner Walker.
I just wanted to share from a historical perspective that you all may not know, and maybe as Commissioner Madden, you're probably more in tune than other colleagues, but PAL has come a long way. Now, PAL was just in one room at Simpson Park for years. And the Lord blessed where we're, because of what Mr. Donahue and at the time, City Manager Doug Thomas, we were able to, get the facility where they are now, which was Lake Ridge Center, which was the Housing Authority had that building for how many ever years they were doing programming out of there. And then, of course, it was repurposed to where it is today for PAL. It was like a game changer, going from one room almost at Simpson Park to a building where they are now. And I would agree with you, Commissioner Madden. Yes, the more children and the more services can be provided, it will be of help, but it's going to take more personnel too. You're going to need more people, more personnel, and that's going to take staffing. Well, that's staffing, of course, the staffing, budgeting for staff, of course, money and dollars as well. And I was along the same track too, thinking, well, hey, if Station 3 would become available, PAL can move and boom, there's more space. But I'm just excited to know that they got a place to even go to called their home versus a one office space that they had for many, many years. And I'm sure as the program grows and as more opportunity avail itself, hopefully the city will be able to, see expansion. But some of the expansion will be done, I think, right there on the premises, on the property where they are. You could repurpose that building. I'm not an architect or engineer, but I could see that building itself being repurposed and having more of a space that can be utilized, because you got quite a bit of space there that can be used for other offices to help support maybe more computer labs or whatever for after-school tutoring and that kind of thing, or summer camping. So I can see that down the road, though. And I'm just saying that because I'm pleased to know we got a building now where we had just an office for many years. And I think that building, again, that we do have on the grounds where it sit can service more if it had some, renovations being repurposed.
Can I also ask, so I know when it was underneath the community board, they did a lot of, volunteers came from the community. It was a huge volunteer base, and the coaching and concessions and all that for the games. I know that the numbers for all of that diminished a little bit with COVID, and people weren't out and about. So that's why I was kind of curious as well. Like with coaching, do you still get volunteers from the community to do the coaching for the different sports, or is it now do officers give volunteer service to coach the teams? How does that work?
The majority of it is community support,
Yes,
and
community volunteers.
folks from the neighborhoods come forward and help coach the youth sports after, of course, they're vetted out and allowed to do that. But, we still have a very strong support base, particularly in the coaching staffs for the different sports. The bigger sports, cheerleading, football, the archery and fishing and stuff like that is primarily handled by the in-house LPD folks.
I'd sense, too, that if you were thinking about expanding this program, you'd probably like to have a little bit of time for a strategic plan on
Sure.
next steps and what that looks like. and
Yes, sir.
budgeting.
It take some research to see where the best place to expand that and, where the need would be to serve.
Thank you. Commissioner Music?
I'm good.
Okay. Other comments? Yes, you're good?
It's a thumbs up, I'm good.
But I was watching your face. I see a little.
No, I'm good.
You're good? You're not vexed on something else? All right, good. Not to create some kind of public angst. I just want to make sure that we're all being heard well. Okay, so then let's regroup. If we do the round, and I'm going to say what I thought I heard, and then you can correct me. If we hold the roundabout at the airport for funding for fiscal year '24, we don't have to do that one now, or PAL, we can wait on talking about it at a later time as well. And the Polk Museum of Art, we can wait until we've had a presentation in '24. Then we're really talking about the two things that were listed as the amount we would want to put for Mayor's Council on the Art and any BIC funding. That's what's remaining. Anything else? It is BBIC?
Mr. Mayor, I just for clarification, I mean, my understanding from the Chamber's request was that they were going to utilize that funding to support kind of a multiple kind of small business-oriented consulting and other things in addition to the BBIC, which does some of that, and I think even provides maybe some potential access to funding and the like. So I don't think it's specifically for BBIC. That's just one of the services that they were requesting to provide through that request of $500,000.
So I had a call from former Mayor Gal Fields, who is an advocate of us utilizing this. Did anybody else get that same phone call?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yes.
yes.
And the only thing he was talking about was that funding. And so, but I'm working under the assumption that it was the 500,000, and I don't know that you're wrong in that. I'm not questioning that. I guess, I wonder if what we could do is allocate some number that we think is closer. If he's watching, you could call in, and then talk about it when we do our next strategic planning, our next budget session, so that we can decide what to do with that number. In other words, do we create a plug or not? And do you know what that number was?
Well, I know the request was the 500,000, but I'm trying to make sure I understand the comment that made by city manager here about other services besides the BBICs. I thought the request was for BBIC services and its programming. Is it not?
Well, so if you'll remember back to, I think it was probably our very first discussion on ARPA. This was before the rules fully came out, and there were multiple versions of sets of rules after that. But in a workshop, I believe it was, when Mr. Skates was still with the chamber, he appeared before the commission, and we had received, I believe at that time, the request in writing for $500,000. But what Mr. Skates had presented was not just the BBIC, but multiple other offerings that would come from that 500,000 in the context that I discussed a moment ago, where I think that, consulting type services for small business and others. And so my impression from that discussion with Mr. Skates that morning was that it was going to be for multiple things it would fund. And I don't know, it sounds like you all have had some other conversations, and maybe it has now shifted only to BBIC.
I think you're right in your initial ask, because it was to support the works. I think that was the name of the new facility.
That's right.
And I think there was going to be what you just shared, Mr. City Manager. But I think the last visits we've had, those of us that had the visits, I thought the most emphasis was placed upon the BBIC programming. Am I saying that right or wrong for you all that had met here of late? I know I had the meeting. Now, who else had the meeting besides me?
Commissioner McLeod.
And I did. Mayor Fields called me as well, and I met with Amy Wiggins. It's been a month ago or so. But I think, so I would support keeping that 500,000 that we had originally committed as a placeholder, but I think it would be great to hear from the chamber. With the change in leadership,
question.
you know,
Yes,
it was,
yes.
the request was made under Corey Skates and now Amy Wiggins as president, and to have, whether it's Amy or Mayor Fields, to come and update us so we're clear on the details, all of us as a group. And then I would suggest then we can move forward. Do we approve that, you know, as final?
I would have no problem with that because I know in the meeting I had with both of them at City Hall here was still want to make sure that ask is there.
So we're only be talking about it as a placeholder at this point.
I think so. The message to me, and I'm sure to you, Commissioner Walker, was this is very much, it remains a need in the community. We want the commission to know why this, the ask is still there and want this to be considered, even though there's been a change in leadership and we may not have heard anything for several months on it, it's still relevant, and that's what they were asking that we consider, but I think that'd be good to hear as a group.
Absolutely concur with that, and I like thinking about it as a placeholder for purposes of budgeting, and we can then turn around and take a look at that after we have had a redefinition of it. I know it's no more than that, and it might be
It's no more
less,
than 500.
but it is certainly what Mayor Fields thinks is the absolute most effective single tool that we can provide to help black businesses be more successful, and that they have a good stringent follow-up and accountability process in place, and he's a big advocate of that.
And I think it's because, you know, for how many ever years it has been, it even predates my time here on the commission, that this particular program has been brought to our city in hopes of having something done by now, and still has not come to fruition. So I know it's been a while, and I've been here 13 years now, right? So, but of course, I think here of late, because of some dollars being available through opera, as we have seen, I think the ask became even more centered.
Okay, so is there a Commissioner Music?
I just have a question on that. So is the $500,000 the totality that would run that program?
Let's have a presentation.
Yeah. My question would be, if it is not, if it's more than that, then what's holding it up, right? But if we're paying the totality of it, right? If us giving 500,000 covers the entire program, right, then I would certainly want to know that as well, because then that program depends on us having that amount set aside constantly for that to be successful. So I would certainly request that they come and give us a presentation so that I can kind of wrap my head around that.
Commissioner Madden?
Thank you, Mayor. I also would like, if we're going to have a presentation on that, I would really like to see how that affects the KPMG consulting fees.
Yes, agree. It's a good idea. Yes, Commissioner Reed?
Thank you, and I have maybe a recap. Mike, we have, what, $2.9 million in reserve right now?
2.9 million undesignated, correct, yes, sir.
We're gonna
Slightly more
spend-
than that.
And we're gonna spend 1.8 on the fire and the police of that money, right?
If you approve what's been requested of 13 police personnel and 12 fire personnel, you will spend approximately $1.8 million of that,
And that's gonna
Yes.
leave us $1.1 million.
thereabouts, yes, sir.
All right, and then we're asking for $500,000 of that to go to the Chamber of Commerce. Is that a fair statement?
Let's say we
That's what they're
placeholder
asking
with
for,
it, yes.
And then Sarah's asking for $250,000 for the culture art, is that
Yes,
right?
I am.
Now, can you explain to me where we're getting economic benefit from that money? You were talking about that a while ago.
Well, I think if we're going to have a placeholder and presentations from the chamber, then we could also have a presentation from the arts, the Mayor's Council on the Arts, as far as that's concerned, too.
And if we're gonna start spending all of our money, we don't need to spend this money today. And I don't think we need to allocate it today.
No.
You know, every time we get a pot of money, we burn through it. And I think we need to have reserve. The tea leaves are still telling me that the stock market's gonna go bad. We're in a recession, we got high inflation, and we're gonna have a major deflation in property, in fixed assets in 24 and 25. And we got till 26 to spend the money. So again, and then you want us to raise the millage rate, so, I'm having a lot of concerns about what we're doing today.
That's fair. What we're trying to do is give ourselves some scope with respect to potential.
I want to put the $50,000 back in there for the airport, roundabout then.
If you want to advocate that, we can do that. And do that out of, is that actually available out of ARPA? No, so that wouldn't affect ARPA,
It
so.
can't come out here,
Yeah.
we'll find it somewhere.
Okay, so, and we still have time for that one. So the only two things I'm hearing then for discussion are the 250 for Mayor's Council on the Arts, and then the 500 for BBIC as any additionals. Is there anything else beyond that? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I will add, I mean, we have had a workshop and then another ARPA funding, and we haven't spent it yet, to Commissioner Reed's point. So we need another workshop so we can decide if we want to spend it.
Well, so I think to maybe just address that, depending on the way the rest of the conversation from the commission goes today, we got a couple of options, and I've kind of suggested some of that in the beginning. I mean, we can, if the commission wants to have another workshop, we can certainly do that. But the other side of it is, I mean, we do have the two public hearings in September. And so if at the first public hearing, which is not the adoption hearing, if we're down to just considering those two requests, we could probably do it as part of that initial, public budget hearing. Or the other option would be to have some form of a workshop between now and then. But that's how we could set it up to get the presentations, if that's what the commission desires to do.
I'm just curious. I mean, I don't know if I'm the only one that counts votes, but we've, kind of count votes in the public workshop. We know that Bill won't vote for it. I don't know if Chad, hearing a new presentation, would vote for it anyway, and I don't know if Mike Music, who doesn't want any projects in the budget, would vote for it. So I'm just saying, do we need we could probably determine if it would go forward with the presentation or without a presentation. I'm just saying, is this the elephant in the room? I don't know, we
Well-
don't get to talk to each other, remember, to the public outside these meetings. So sometimes it seems we're a little disorganized when we do actually get to talk. But I'm just stating the obvious, right? We've had this conversation. This is our third conversation on these. We committed to these people. We would consider them in ARPA funds. How long ago was it? It was in the middle of the crisis that the money came for. So I don't know. It's like, I'm looking at the police request, and we focus on the fact that this is public safety. We're considering our millage rate. If this is really important, these things, are they viable? Do they have 4 votes? And would it change it if we had a workshop or not? That's what I'd like to hear from my colleagues.
Art is not available for ARPA, or is it? Not at all. Okay, so if we talk about.
Wait, hold on.
Now, define that. If it's Mayor's Council on the Arts, no. But if you are going to identify, I'll tell you what, I'm going to let our expert ARPA person answer this one.
Deidre, the ARPA, yes.
Let me clarify. When I said Mayor's Council on the Arts, I was thinking that would be the conduit to make it simpler for KPMG to do the grants out to the nonprofits, so that could be overseen by city like it has been in the same way, and that's kind of why I said Mayor's Council on the Arts instead of cultural arts, only nonprofits that are in the line. So just a point of clarification before Deidre schools me.
The only issue with the Mayor's Council of the Arts is that they're not a entity to administer the funds, so we would have to administer those funds within the city. And the applications are done. They were done prior to the second ARPA workshop. So we kind of put the brakes on that after the vote at that workshop. But all of the applications are done. The plans are done for if the city commission so wanted to continue with that program.
In other words, the application's in place that we could add the 250, and the city would be responsible for its distribution, and
But
it
you
could.
would have to decide on the amount to provide
Then
to
you
each
could do
applicant.
$10,000 grants
Yes.
blanket, and that's easier for KPMG to account for because it would all be succinct. instead of saying you get $250 and this nonprofit gets $1,000 and this one. So if you had a clean
Well, we would
structure.
actually- The city will actually be the monitor for those
Right.
grants, yes.
She doesn't care about the amounts.
Yeah, the amounts
And allocation.
don't matter.
Okay.
So if we wanted to do 100 applicants or 10 applicants.
Matter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't you have to, Deidre, follow that $25,000 grant to follow it, to make sure it's spent and how it's spent?
Yes.
Within by the 2026. So that is significant, to follow each organization, how they spend their $10,000.
Organizations actually, because when they have any type of grants, the onus is on them to provide information back to the city that would say, this is how we spent it, and these are the receipts, and this is what's going on. So nonprofits are used to doing that. So it'd just be like GiveWell or anything, or United Way, where you report back on the grant that you got. So there are mechanisms in place. I think the fact that the staff already has that laid out means we were all pretty serious about this early on when we first, and that the organizations, from my point of view, are still in need. So that's just kind of my plea about this, is that we're not, just because the news media doesn't cover impact to organizations, doesn't mean those organizations still aren't suffering the impacts of, look at RP funding. They're still here from COVID.
We are our own auditor on this,
Right.
right?
Yes.
Thank you.
So it could be used, and it wouldn't have a big load on KPMG.
Correct.
Okay.
Mayor?
Yes, sir. Yeah, Commissioner Walker.
Yes, it is. And I would say too, and because I keep hearing, as my colleague has said, Commissioner McCauley, about the arts needs that's still there for the small, particular organizations. But as I shared before, some months back, before we did away and put all the monies under as we did, prior to now, you got small businesses still need dollars. So, but I was in hopes of what I was thinking and what I was hearing from when I had my meeting with Amy Wiggins and former Mayor Fields about BBIC, was that also those dollars will be used for small businesses. But I want to make sure I say that because I want to make sure, too, as we hear and as the public is hearing, we're not just talking about BBIC only. I'm thinking that dollars still be used for support of small businesses as well.
And my only comment on that would be that I think BBIC does a great job of making sure the accountability on that is in place.
But
And
I
it'd
want
be
to make
harder-
sure
yeah,
the
but-
small businesses,
Right.
have.
And that's the purpose of.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, okay.
Commissioner Reed.
And of course, when I met with Gal, and I thought those were gonna be more of loans. They're gonna be loans, not gifts. Is that a fair statement?
I think that's the way it
They're
is.
loans,
sir.
they're not gonna be gifts, so we'll get the money back, to some degree, if they pay it back.
That's why it would be nice
Then
to have a
that
presentation.
then adds another complexity to the tracking and spending. By the time we made that clear up front, we would prefer not to do loans. Because,
This is the,
I understand,
okay.
but if we're going to loan money out, we've got to worry about how we're going to get it back, when we get it back, and then how do we redistribute it in enough time that we don't run afoul of the federal government. So I'm cautious about the loans versus grants.
We just wanted you to keep us orderly.
We're rocket search.
That was a good one.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I thought I meant, when we all had those discussions, I think we had veered away from the idea of loans, and I thought the majority of you had said you did not want to go after loans because of the potential pitfalls that come with trying to make sure somebody's going to pay us back on time, and then we redistribute it in enough time. We need
This is the way that Gal explained it to me.
right, I'm just saying, I think we need to make sure that it's grants, not loans.
Okay, and that's what I want to make sure I heard you say
Right,
too as
no,
well.
it really needs to be
Yeah.
grants.
That's what we all thought, with grants. And again, going back to what I was just saying, I think it's important, as the mayor and said, I think Mr. Madden, you might say it too, we just have a placeholder and have a time we could be discussed, those folk in front of us, to make sure we all have clarity. Because I don't think we all got clarity here today.
So I have more clarity from Gal than I had a few minutes ago.
Just keep talking, and we'll get the answer.
And it is 500 for BBIC. But he also mentioned, which I'm just throwing this out, is that Prospera, which does the very same thing for the Hispanic businesses, is a 350 request as well. So it's 850 in the total, and I don't know if that we have the stomach for all that. Commissioner Music.
Yeah, so just, I guess maybe as a defense of my lack of desire to want to
Yes, sir.
do projects, as it was pointed out, you know. I'm sorry, yes. Sorry about that. You know, I mean, I look at this and everybody, I mean, here in just one text, 350 grand, right? Of somebody who is desperately needed. I mean, 90% of my workforce is Hispanic, right? So, I mean, you know, when I look and I hear a need like that, it wasn't even in my preview, but now it is, right? So, I mean, we can sit and we could give money to every project, everyone, right? Or we can look and say, just like the ARPA funds, they aren't ARPA funds, they're our funds. We paid taxes, and we get frustrated and angry when the taxes go up. And what we're talking about is raising property taxes when gas is already high, when every single thing that we buy is high. So that's what I'm trying to protect. I'd love to give PAL. I mean, I think what I remember PAL being and what it is now is just phenomenal. My kids didn't go through it like your kids, but it's just a wonderful organization. You know, I wasn't in the arts, but my wife was, so I have a passion for that. But when I sit here and look at the end of the day, I've taken my wallet, I'm out of money, right? And when I'm looking at that from the city standpoint, we've got to, as Commissioner Reed said, we've got to have stuff set aside because we do not know what tomorrow holds. And if we were in 2006, the commission there would have been spending like it was nothing, and 2 years later they had nothing. And we do have to be careful. And I'm not speaking down to you. I'm just saying that we do have to be careful because we can give and give and give because everybody that comes and requests to us has an honest need, right? Small businesses, I mean, that's all of us here at the table, right? So my position is just, I would love to hear from Gao and Amy and these people about what it is that they're asking. But when we do open that, the people who don't have a seat at that table and didn't get to come and do a presentation, that's not fair either. So that's why I tend to lean on pulling back more than giving. So.
And yet, you have ARPA funds to be able to do this.
And we need to spend every single one. I believe it is 26, I believe.
Well, right, it is. And it's good to have some extra ARPA funds because you don't know what you get in an infrastructure expense that you didn't anticipate.
How many things have changed since our first talk about this, right? I mean.
So I'm not arguing with you at all. It's just.
Yeah.
His feeling is that this pays huge dividends to the people who don't have the opportunity to be able to get started up.
Right, and I'm all for that. That's why I don't know anything about it. So I would love for him to either give me a call or to
So we'd
come and do a
certainly, well, I
presentation.
think we certainly need to have that. If we do a placeholder, then we need to all hear it together so we can all ask questions together. We can hear it at one time.
I'm in favor of a placeholder, certainly.
Okay, all right. So then now my question would be, do you want that placeholder to be 5 or 850?
Let's hold 850.
I think probably that makes sense.
We're out of money. We don't have 350,
We do. I think we have 350 last.
really.
Yeah,
Right at that.
that's 1-1.
Right at that, yeah.
We could hold $1,000,001 back and then talk about it later, too.
We've talked about it later 3 times.
Okay, so I'm going to just throw this out and then shoot at me. So we have 250 for the arts, 500 for grants for BBIC, and then 350 for Prospera, which is the Hispanic BBIC, if you will.
And I'm just going to reiterate my point. My point is we wait for later. What? They're waiting for later, hoping we won't spend it. The people for it are waiting for later, hoping you could convince the other. I don't, do you think that either side's going to move on their on their vote, or we just did not delaying the inevitable, and we could then know what we have to go forward with our millage discussion?
Well, I think we put it in there as if it's there. Yes, if you would
I don't
agree.
know why we have to have an ethnic group per se. We got $500,000 is it's all the same pot of money, the way I look at it. It hasn't got to be one ethnic or another, but we could have,
Two organizations that are aligned towards that
yeah, I mean,
clientele.
it doesn't, I don't know why we have to put two different separate pots of money. I think
Okay.
$500,000, if you're gonna even do it, is enough versus trying to, here you get, we spend all this, we don't spend all that. I mean, I don't think it's fair to divide the money up in the ethnicity.
Commissioner McLeod?
Well, I think I would go back to the original request of $500,000,
Yeah.
supporting that as a placeholder. For me, when the criteria changed from the federal government and we were allowed to pull those dollars into capital costs for public safety, then that changed the picture. And so with the Chamber's request, it was specific, it's tangible, it's not just a category, and the challenges that come along with trying to spend those dollars. So I would still support that 500,000, but the rest going toward those capital costs for police and fire.
What
That's
I
where
like,
am. That's,
what I like about that suggestion too, Commissioner McLeod, is it just lets us have some fungible monies left that we don't anticipate the need and use for yet. Yes, Commissioner Mann.
Well, then if we think we're gaining a vote on the 500,000, I would reduce it to the 250 and give the arts the 250 and settle on the same 500. Because they were both impacted during COVID, and these are rescue dollars.
So I think we're talking about Arts 250, yes?
I don't think Commissioner
I
McCra-
wasn't.
no.
I was
Oh.
500,000
Oh,
in
well,
the chamber, and then the rest go into the.
I was
capital
just doing
costs.
Prospera and, yeah, no, okay.
Like the,
I'm
so,
just not, I'm not, when I
Sure.
hear the challenges, and I know the Council on the Arts can be the conduit for those grant dollars, but I think we need as much as we can go into public safety capital costs to try and hold that millage rate as low as possible.
as you
So
can
if
get
that's
it.
an avenue to do that, that's what I would support. Not saying that there's not value in the arts grants or organizations aren't deserving. I'm just not where Commissioner McCarley is on that. Now, I may be outnumbered, but
But we have allocated all the capital costs required already for police,
For 23.
for
Not
23.
necessarily for,
but
Yeah.
if we pull from the,
For 23, we do.
right,
that's with the millage increase. He might not want to have a millage increase.
All right.
So I think it's important to note, like, what's the threshold of what ARPA funds should actually be spent for rescue dollars in the original workshop we had, and what should go towards the police and fire? I mean, and that is, like I said, I think for ARPA fund spending or any of this, do we need a 4-person majority?
Yeah.
So,
Simple majority.
Simple majority.
Majority of anything.
yeah.
Well, I think
so-
we can do that. I think we can do this here.
That's what I mean. I really would
Okay.
hate to just prolong
We aren't
this,
gonna
that's why we're
prolong
here
this.
today.
I don't
I don't think we need to prolong it either. I think we
Let's
can make
take
a
them one
decision.
at a time,
Yeah.
okay? So let's start with the 500 as a placeholder for both BBIC and Prospera. Do you want it to be 5? How many of those would be, and the
It's a
option
total of
is?
500.
A total of 5. It could be 850 if you wanted to run it up, but I
No,
don't
no,
think
no.
we have the
It'd be
appetite.
500. That's what I'm.
500.
500 for BBIC, but it includes, again, the portion, I want to make sure, when they come before us, it was also supporting the small business concept and all that for,
It's how it helps support small business,
Okay,
yes.
all right.
Right.
Okay.
We gotta have to have one channel for it.
yeah.
Okay, all those in favor of, oops, excuse
No,
me.
I will not vote for 500 for the business if that precludes the arts. And so
It
if.
doesn't, it doesn't. We're
No,
taking
but
them one by one.
I know we're going to take it one by one, but if they all vote yes for the 500 and then we don't get the right number for the arts, then I'm reneging on my 500 for the business. And I'll make it 250 for the business and 250 for the arts. Do you all
Okay, I have
negotiate?
an-
I have to
I
negotiate
have
the
an
business.
idea. I'm really
Come on.
creative. Let's vote for the arts first.
Yes.
Okay, so $250,000 for the arts. How many are in favor? 1, 2, 3.
What I thought might be the
All right,
case, so then
that's
they
all-
don't
it's
get
a
my vote on
majority
the
rule.
business.
How many for, and then, do you want 500 or 850? 500 is
500.
the threshold. How for a BBIC and Prospera in some mix?
Whatever it is, 500.
How many in favor of that? 1, 2, 3. Okay,
Nothing, Dan. Done.
we're all done.
done.
So we're doing neither.
It's good negotiations there.
Fascinating. Okay. I don't think that's a healthy decision. I just want for the record.
So you think it's healthy to allow the 500 and let the arts go?
I
And they're the
think-
ones
I
really
think-
hit hard during COVID.
No, it's not that. I think that we have a multiplying effect when we help provide incubation dollars towards small businesses that can do lots of things over time, and then not to do that, that helps businesses thrive, and it's a mistake to do otherwise. And we have the opportunity to do that in a segment that has not been well-reached, and I don't think we should omit that responsibility.
Would they be willing to decrease their amount to get some monies and then have that decreased amount go to the arts?
So you would want to consider it at 250.
Yes, or some other number that they would suggest.
Commissioner McCraw.
Thank you. And I agree, Commissioner Madden, that we've talked about this many times, and that can be painful going through this process. As we all know, we can't talk outside of these meetings. And so I would say we keep it fluid. And I know that means more conversations and potentially other presentations, but if there's still a desire to have funding for the arts, then continue to push and persuade. And we will continue to push and persuade on the business side for BBIC and Prospera. And we have time. So as we get down the stretch to the final budget, that's when the deadline, at least for this budget year, is that we don't have to end the discussion now, even though we would like to because we've talked about it so much. But if we really believe these are worthwhile causes that need to be funded out of these monies, then we continue that conversation and allow those representatives to come in and make that case as well. That would be my recommendation.
Would you recommend we have a placeholder of just an amount for purposes of that discussion?
I would change on that.
What would you change on? Because if we get one more vote today, then we could go ahead and vote.
Yeah, so, where I would not lean as heavy on putting the money towards the arts and towards the small business and the BBIC as well, I would like to put a placeholder to continue the discussion to hear a presentation, right? Because, at this point, I don't want to say no just to say no, but I don't know enough about
That's
what
fair.
it is that they're doing. So a placeholder can go away. So, I would be okay with that. But to me, when I hear Commissioner McCarley talk about individuals that have been hurt that are in that, I agree, but I don't know them. They haven't come and talked to me, so I don't know what their struggle is, right? I have a business. I know what COVID has done. So I think that to put money aside to be able to move a conversation and a meeting forward, I'm okay with. I think that's prudent just to do that. And like I said, the multiplicity that you can get from certain monies is important for us to not overlook. But I want to know more.
I like the placeholder too, and I just want to say that even though we talk about the arts, it's an anomaly, they're businesses as well. They might be a not-for-profit business. All that means is when you're a not-for-profit is any revenue that you make above your expenses goes back into the nonprofit. So it doesn't go into a shareholder pocket or an owner's pocket. So they're businesses just like everybody else are. We just talk about them a little bit uniquely because they're nonprofit organizations and they're a specific part of our community. But I'd be thrilled with a placeholder of $500,000, and if that shakes out to $100,000 for businesses and $100,000 for something, that's fine. But I would like to maintain a placeholder of $500,000.
Any other comments?
It's 500,000 for
Discussion purposes.
flat for
Flat.
For
for
everything,
anything, okay.
everything we may want to consider a mix-up.
$2.50 for something.
I was going to suggest a dollar amount, but it's going to be a little more.
Do it, go ahead.
700,000 for flat. Considering anything, 700,000.
Anybody have another alternative suggestion?
Okay, so it looks like it's Commissioner Walker and Commissioner McCarley and the mayor and I who are even have any threshold to want to vote for any of the money. Well, he's saying, you're saying that, no, I'm just being realistic, because we've talked about this 3 times, and I know you want to hear more information, but I doubt at the end of the day it's going to change your mind. So, but I'm really looking at my colleague, Commissioner Walker and Commissioner McCarley and you, because that's 4. If we could decide on this and get past it after 4 times of talking about this and then move on to our millage rate and our police and fire and know what we have left, don't worry. I'm going to be advocating for the art, for the roundabout, and for the museum expansion. So I'm going to still want to talk about the arts, but COVID's over and we still haven't given relief money out of our American relief money. I think it's terrible. So I think we should spend the relief money as little bit as we want, as much as we think we have threshold for, and then give the rest to police and fire and get on with our millage discussion. So Commissioner Walker and Commissioner McCarley and Mayor, what are you willing, I know you're not going to get the 850 that you probably wanted, you know, but what could we four collectively agree on that we could get 4 votes on these things that are important to us today?
Well, let's take them one at a time.
Okay.
All right, let's take the 700? Is that what your number is on?
Yes.
But that's for both things?
Both.
Okay, so let's start with thinking about the use of $700,000. How many would be in favor of allocating $700,000 to, between these Prospera, BBIC, and
Just
the
say
arts?
BBIC, that Prospera together, that's one
Okay.
thing.
Right?
And then the arts,
How many would be in favor of 700,000
both.
for both?
Well, we're the 4 of us. So I would do whatever the 4 of us could decide on for those organizations.
Chad's vote.
That's it.
As voted.
I don't want it a placeholder. I want to just
I want to move
seal the
on.
We're
deal.
going to decide. We're going to start with the 700,000, so we know what we have to work with. Okay. That's all but 2, right? Okay. So let's then talk about the 700,000, how to do the split, okay? And at least what we think we would do, or is it that you would like to just leave that for purposes of conversation? What's your preference?
Decide today.
Okay.
Saturday, 5 and 2.
That I'm out on.
5 and
I'm a
2.
placeholder, yes, and so just the counter to that, Commissioner Madden, I do think that minds can be changed, and I've seen times when people come and present to us, and you come into a meeting and think, I'm headed this way, and you hear something, and it's persuasive, and you say, well, I will support that, and I think that's a good use of public dollars. So I wouldn't say that today, based on the way one of us feels right now, doesn't have the potential to change. So just to keep that in mind as the discussion moves forward.
So
But I'm
is
out.
your recommendation that-
I'm a placeholder for 700,000. I don't know how that splits right
Okay,
now.
so your recommendation is to take a vote on, just hold the 700,000 for further discussion? How many people are in favor of that?
700 for other discussion.
Further
Yes,
discussion, meaning
3,
down the
4,
road,
5.
not
Okay,
today.
So 5. So we're
Not
going to do that.
today?
So we're going to put 700,000 in to discuss at our next budget meeting in terms of allocation. We'll have some presentations available for that purpose.
ARPA. And that's out of the ARPA monies.
It's out of ARPA.
Okay, I'll make sure I got this down. We're not going to make a decision today, we're going to move it to another day.
We are
Another
correct.
discussion time.
Correct. That you'll be involved in.
Oh, I'm sure I will, but
All right.
I'll try to get past it today. too.
Point of clarification on that, though, I mean, we're not making a decision here today that's set in stone.
Correct.
So, I mean, to say that we could talk about this for another 2 hours, decide it, and still move on it later, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Is that,
But we could make a decision today.
Can,
right, what I'm saying is
But
that
it could be undone. His point is it could be undone.
yeah, okay.
Okay, yes.
Okay.
That's correct. So, it's a good place to land. It's a tweener, and we'll take it. So then we can take a look at what to do with millage, if you could show us some illustrations with that in it, sir.
So I've gotten asked 2 questions about the millage, one from Commissioner Reed, then right afterwards from Commissioner McLeod, and they both ended up being very similar. It was, if we look at the current millage, 5.4323, what would it look like if we added the 12 firefighters, the debt service on the station, and the 13 police personnel?
You may get bigger.
Yeah, could you make it a little
Will,
bigger?
yes, sir.
I
Sorry,
can't see that.
clicked on the wrong one.
You can't.
So what it does is it takes you from 95 days in '25 to 73 days, but more importantly, what you're looking at is 19 days, almost 20 days of spend. Again, all we're going off of is what we know as best guesses right now. But
Just for fun, can you pump those to 6%? Or make it just the middle one? That's good.
Go from 4 to 6, okay, I got you saying.
Take it back. I just, yeah, thanks.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
so even doing what, if I hear, not hearing, but if I see what's going on, and basically the question that came to Mr. Brozart from my colleagues, in fiscal year 25, we're still within the threshold of what we want to be at. Because we have always said, as I said earlier in conversation, we do not want to go, we want to keep between 45, 60 days of cash. You got 73.
Okay, but look at how fast you're dropping. And this doesn't assume we're going to have any of these discussions again next year and the year after that, and other things aren't going to get added, right? So just be cautious about just assuming that that 73 is good, because if for some reason you decide in 24 you want to hire 6 folks, because growth is going to be better. That's where you are, okay? If you do that again in 25, we're going to start buying cars too. If we use up 700,000 of what's left, we're going to be buying cars as well as personnel, okay?
My argument would be still, Mr. Brozart, we still don't know what property values are going to do.
You're exactly
That could
right.
help support. It could still, we don't know. I'm sorry, not God.
No, you're exactly right. What I'm suggesting is that if you start seeing these kinds of drops, going from 60.
Even what you just did, sir, we're still within what we had always said we want to stay at.
But please look at 26.
I see it.
It's a guaranteed millage increase in 26, guaranteed, but it's going to be for greater than the 3326. That's why we suggest taking bites at millage increases when it comes to large additions of personnel or recurring costs, whether that's personnel or what it is.
I'm done, yeah.
He's gonna do the 571 next.
Well, Mayor, if I may.
Sir, yeah. Go ahead.
Is, Mr. Brosart, based on what we have, the information we have today, so when you say
Correct.
it's a guaranteed millage increase down the road, we can't say that with certainty, because the picture could change in property values, and there are a number of variables that we don't know today. So I think that's important to mention as we have this discussion.
And
You're exactly right. We don't know whether it's going to be 4. It could be 6, and we're blessed, or 8, and we're blessed again. I don't think any of us knows what the economy is going to do, but we do know that there are serious concerns about the economy. That's why I bring it up, because you have that potential.
And the other thing I would just caution that we've discussed is, one emergency. That day's cash would carry us through if we were to, knock on wood, have another Irma. And so they are the unknowns, but that's where the healthy day's cash can save us.
well, I think it does underscore the fact that if we do a millage increase, it can be less than the recommended millage increase. Yes, Commissioner Reed.
Can you put up the 576 now?
Yes, sir. What I'm going to do, I'm going to undo those what-ifs. This is if you adopt the full 3326.
If you put in
No.
the police,
4, 3.
the 2 years of police.
At 5 each. Put them in at 5 each, still. 5 people, 5 5 people each?
I think that's whatever he had last time.
He said 4 to 5.
What'd you have last time, Mike?
Did 5 each,
5, yeah.
round numbers. And then, no, I did not do the vehicles in this year.
$73 days.
That doesn't seem right. No, I didn't. That's what. Yeah, there we go. And then to the mayor's question of what it would look like if we're fortunate to have greater than 4, if that was at 6, that's what you're looking at there.
So the good news of this is it gives you carry going forward to accommodate some of those things that we know we don't have budgeted. But Bill, Commissioner Reed, the property values in this are super conservative at 4%. Wouldn't you think? Really?
I'm gonna
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, and Commissioner Music.
Thank you. So, when we talk about this and when I have, my family members reach back out to me and say, hey, you guys are voting for a tax increase, right? And they're all property owners. Really, what they're gonna want to know is, what does this mean to me, right? When we're looking at point something, right, over that, what does that look like to somebody that pays a $2,500 bill every year?
You'll find this.
So, and what we used is, Deidre, what's our average value, home value? Yeah, it's so, a taxable value of 100,000, or, someone that is a $150,000 home, $50,000 homestead exemption is not unrealistic at all in our market. We know a lot are a lot higher, but this is a very good benchmark even still. So these people right now are paying $543 a year to us, okay? If you were to increase that to the 5.7649, that's a $33 a year increase on someone that has a $150,000 home with a $50,000 homestead exemption.
So one thing that I would love to do, and Kevin, I don't know if this is something that you guys do historically or not, but when something like this does get approved, to have something that goes out that just says, hey, here's a simple way to figure out what it means to you. Because, when we sit and we talk about that, I don't want to seem like a spoiled brat, but I'm sure I spend more than that in coffee in a couple of days. Right, so I don't want to downplay it because that's not everybody, but in the same respect, we are battling back and forth about minuscule amounts of money, really, that can play big parts in people's lives, whether it's the arts, whether it's POW, whether it's the, so there is a much,
Well, and when you consider our current property taxes don't cover our police.
Right.
And it's only the dividend from Lakeland Electric and our other revenue sources that we're able to have the quality of life. We have a smaller millage than Mulberry.
Yes.
So, it is a perspective builder. I know when I came on this commission and started to see the millage rate repaid in comparison to other places in our county, I was astounded to see how low our millage rate was in
Agreed.
comparison for the quality of life that we enjoy.
absolutely, I agree.
This seems like an appropriate time to talk about millage rates and what you would like to propose we take a look at. Because what you're looking at is the 5.7649 in this example, which gives you our current rate plus what we've covered for public safety. Is that and remember, in this vote, we're just voting to protect the top position that we would advertise
Highest
and
we
then
would go.
utilize.
The
We can
highest we
always,
would go.
again, be less than.
The highest we would
Yeah, I
go.
would be for
I have
that.
a question.
Yes. Sure.
Mike, what would that increase look like on a business? instead of a homeowner. Like, so on our commercial,
Sure.
any of our commercial people or businesses.
Sure, tell me what value you want me to put in.
Oh, no, what's probably average in the city? We have a lot of businesses in
Property
Lake
tax on a,
100,000?
Just pick 500,000.
Yeah, half a
Yeah,
million.
500,000.
Oh, good. Sorry, got a delay here.
they've had a good
5
year.
million.
All right.
They go.
$166 a year
Okay,
increase.
yeah. I'm just interested.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh, that's a
I
good
think
question.
residentially, you know, it does seem minuscule, but if you start getting bigger and bigger and bigger in that number
No, that's,
of taxable
question to
income.
ask.
perspective is what's important for everybody, from the resident or to the business person, right? Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's start with the high number on the board, 5.7649. Who would be in favor of setting that as our millage rate?
Maximum
Be
millage.
maximum.
That's
Maximum millage for the trim notice.
Yeah, for trim notice.
Maximum.
Yep.
Maximum.
For
millage
trim
the
notice
Trim
purposes.
notice.
And what does that cover?
That's current budget plus public safety.
That's trim notice
All
purposes.
the public safety?
All of it.
Yeah, yeah, public safety.
It doesn't have to be that high. We can
No.
vote it, we can vote it down.
Vote it down.
That, you vote it down, but that's, you can't go no
Just
higher
can't be
than
any
that.
higher than this, guys. There's no reason not to do that. I don't
All
think.
public safety, Commissioner Madden, if I might have heard your question, that has been recommended,
It's in there.
backing out some of the expense.
Well, no, it'll all be
All's in there.
the ARPA monies will cover these first 13
The remainder
officers,
is in there.
yes.
The remainder's in there in the future year.
Okay.
It's in there.
Commissioner McLeod.
I can, if we need to vote, we can,
Okay. So,
I can hold my comment. for-
all right, current plus public safety, current maximum trim millage would be 5.7649. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Unanimous.
That's our ceiling.
That's your ceiling. You can go down without having to re-advertise. That's correct.
What else do we need to do today?
I don't think I'm gonna vote for that, but it's good to have it to do.
So just to, if I may.
Absolutely, go
And
ahead.
I'm not sold on, if the vote were today, I wouldn't vote for that. I really am not convinced that we can't do this under the current millage rate. When I look at the 14% increase in property values, it gives me pause to raise the rate at all. And I know we talk about, well, it's a small amount, and that may be true, but as you pointed out correctly, costs are going up everywhere. Inflation's at a 40-year high. We are potentially looking at a base rate increase for our electric customers. And so everyone is feeling the pinch. And when we talk about household budgets, every little bit matters. So I want to keep that in mind as we move forward, that it's not a given that we're just going up to the 5.7, even if it does seem like a small amount.
And if I can echo on that a little bit, we're all going to pay as homeowners more anyway because we have an increase of 14.6% or whatever it is. Just in our property values, we're paying more.
Right.
So just,
Now, it's an increase in your asset, but nonetheless, until it's realized, it's still money you have to pay, so.
I will reiterate again that even though I heard, and I respect what my finance director is telling me, but it's not the first time we've been here like this. And where we can remain, as you just indicated, Commissioner McLeod, in some instances, still be within your parameters of having your 45 to 60 days, 3 years out. You're there.
Which is the accepted low.
Expected low, that's right.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, just based on Commissioner Music's comment, just for clarity, even with a 14% property value increase in value, just keep in mind, I think everybody's aware of this, but if you're a homesteaded property and you're outside of your first year, you're capped. Your taxable value's capped at a maximum of, I believe it's 3% or the CPI, whichever. So even
It
though,
isn't gonna realize the
even though their
14%.
true value went up 4%, their taxable value can only go up by the max of 3 or the CPI.
Thank you for that, yes.
That's a good clarifier. Any other comments? All right, this has been a productive day. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, only,
I asked. That's my second close.
sorry, I thought you were talking to your colleagues there. So I think, back to the conversation about the mayor's Council for the Arts and the Prospera and BBIC, when do you want to have those presentations? Do you want us to schedule some workshop prior to the budget meetings in September to have that? And then that's out of the way when we get to the September actual budget hearings? Or do you want to do those as part of that first budget hearing, which is on September, I believe, the 8th?
Well, or a third option, which would be is that we could have both of those presentations made at our commission meeting.
Well, it's part of a workshop. I mean,
Well, during the commission meeting, I'm saying,
The beginning of,
just in the meeting.
That would be enough for me.
yeah, just at the beginning.
Okay, that's what we'll do. We'll
So
schedule
just
them
add
for-
it to okay, so just sometime in the month of August, it sounds
Let's get
like.
into the agenda.
Okay.
The end of the meeting?
No, right, as a presentation during, right at the beginning.
Like we do at
That'd be good.
Then we have one sitting, we listen, we think about,
Ask
we have time
questions
to
together,
respond,
yeah.
right?
Yep.
We have all together, and then we can, when we have our workshop, we can just decide what to do. with it.
Or the other option, similarly, though, would be attached to an agenda study if you didn't want to have it at the commission meeting.
Which would you prefer?
To the study.
I mean, normally our workshops, we do attach either at the end of an agenda study.
I think representatives from the chamber, whoever, can come 5 minutes as requests to appear from the general public, make it concise, as we're already there and assembled. That makes sense to me.
And lets the public see it, which they're more likely to watch that than an agenda study. Yeah, at a commission meeting, right? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. Yes, that's my,
Second that.
Okay, so we'll leave it at the commission meeting.
Okay?
Okay, thank you. This looks like we're about done. Anybody?
About, our senior management team in the room, and you didn't hear from many of them who are here today. But I do want to point out, however, when we go through our departmental, budget meetings with each of them, they've done a tremendous job. And so even though you may not have heard their voices today, they are in the audience, and they've done a great job getting us to this point in the budget development process. So I just want to thank and
We
recognize all of them.
appreciate it very much. Thank you.
And thank you to the mayor and commission, and I am finally done.
We adjourn? We adjourn. Thank you. Yes, sir. And our meeting is adjourned.
Oh my gosh, it's only 2 o'clock?